So welcome everyone to our ALDA talk. We are very happy to have you with us. Today we will discuss about youth engagement, participation and European policies addressing this specific topic. My name is Eva and I work as membership officer at ALDA, the European Association for Local Democracy, and I will moderate the debate. We have invited to join us as speakers Bruno Antonio, who is the coordinator of DYPALL network, developing youth participation at local level, Portugal-based European platform of over 60 civil society organizations and local authorities from more than 30 countries. And he will talk about youth engagement and participation in local policies. And Andrea Messori, president of Replay Network, a social promotion association composed of educators and trainers, active at international level within many European programs, dealing with non-formal education, learning through mobility and active citizenship. Andrea will present the Learning Bubbles project, creating urban gardens for youth engagement in a metropolitan environment. And finally, my colleague Marco Boaria, who is the director of the Resource and Development Unit, will focus on specific programs and tools dedicated to youth. Just a couple of tips in order to use the platform. Please use the chat if you wish to ask questions during the presentation, or click on the hand icon if you want to take the floor after each presentation. So we will allow you to open your microphone. I will now leave the floor to Bruno Antonio for his presentation. Bruno, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Eva, and thank you all the colleagues from ALDA also for this invitation for the DYPALL network to share a bit of our work and also our reflections on this topic of youth participation that is very keen and very close to what we do and to our passion in terms of work. I'm going to start here just sharing my presentation, and I think we can go to a smooth conversation. It's also a public holiday in Portugal, so I'll go it slowly. It's nice to see some of the colleagues from DYPALL, not enjoying their holiday, but around here. So I hope that is now sharing. I believe so. So here's some talk about youth civic engagement and also upcoming opportunities. Myself, as I was saying, I do the coordination of DYPALL network. DYPALL network is a network, as the name says. Basically, we are around 70 organizations, combination between civil society organizations and municipalities. And what puts these organizations together basically is the willingness to discover more, to develop the competence, the capacity to involve young people in decision-making at local level. And I already go through my presentation to try to explain a little bit in more detail what we mean by youth participation in decision-making, what this abstract concept can tell us. My presentation will focus on these new forms of engagement at local level in order to involve youths in policy and decision-making. My first question that I launch and I'll start to explore is what do we mean by youth participation in decision-making in public policy development? Okay, youth participation, usually what we explain is can go from painting the graffiti, and this can be a form of even political participation, to organizing a local initiative in my local community. But within DYPALL network, when we talk about youth participation in decision-making, we're talking about how civil society organizations, how public authorities at local or regional level are having the instruments, the approaches, the methods to engage a certain part of our population that is quite significant still in Europe, compared to other parts of the world, not so much, but it's still a significant part of our communities, our population, and not just in terms of number, but also in terms of critical thinking, proposals, ideas that they have for their communities, and usually are not so engaged in these kind of political processes. They are not so engaged in influencing what we say by the local employment policy, what kind of programs, what kind of strategy do a municipality or a region have to fight unemployment in general and youth unemployment in specific, or housing policy, that is something that is quite serious now in Europe in most of the communities, talking about rural or or urban communities. Housing is becoming one of the major problems for cities in general, for youth in particular. But we could go from culture to so many different areas that are affecting mobility, transportation, and so on. How are our young people contributing with their ideas, thoughts to develop the programs, the solutions? So basically the public policy that then will be transformed into programs and activities and concrete actions at our community level. And we believe, unfortunately, that most of the municipalities, most of the local authorities are still not taking the full potential. Also, when we go to see the number of young people that are part of these bodies in terms of being elected in the different bodies that our local democracies they have, usually not, again, this can change slightly in different European countries. It's not all the same, but in terms of age range, we don't see so much young people represented in these bodies. So it's difficult that the policies also coming out of that address the needs. And also, it's not just addressing the needs, but it's also taking the potential of the creativity, the new inputs, new solutions, new ideas. And unfortunately, many times these are not being used. So it's a huge potential. So DYPALL, within these members, try to discover ways of making this possible. If it was easy, we would not have a reason of existing, but we think that nowadays it's more needed than ever when we see populism raising, when we see citizens in general disbelieving the institutions and disbelieving our democratic processes. So now it connects a bit with my presentation in terms of this new and old forms of participation. Within DYPALL, definitely, and now it's a big trend in terms of discussing and trying to develop new forms of participation. We believe that this is very relevant. It makes all the sense to experiment, to develop more forms, to try to test within 100, 1,000 experience. There will be 3 or 4 models that will be meaningful for people, that will be useful to have more citizens engaged and contributing to the decisions at their communities. But also we question, what about the old forms? Are they to put apart and to forget? We know that citizens in general, they are not so, they were not so participating already for some years. And some of our democracies are already quite stable, coming out of dictatorships or more than 40 years. So all this crisis of democracy is making us a trend that is, let's search for new forms. And we believe that this is very relevant, this is very needed, but at the same time we should question and discuss why the present models are not working. And what is needed to reform, to what kind of changes are needed to make them more attractive to citizens, and particularly to young people in special. We had now, for example, since the pandemic, a huge discussion on this in terms of how more easily it was to engage with the decision maker. I think nowadays it's very interesting to see that, and also for local authorities to start to identify how we don't need to do some formal meeting to start to get citizens' opinions or to meet with people. Sometimes we could do a Zoom meeting in the evening and people would be from their living room available to participate. How we're starting to use the smartphones and engaging in digital forms of participation. So I think the pandemic also brought an opportunity to see how young people can get engaged, citizens in general, and young people in particular. I remember a young colleague that was just entered the university this year, or last year, September last year. And he was telling me that, okay, just because of the pandemic, now I can participate because the local youth council meetings are now online. Before I could not because I'm studying in Lisbon. And I wanted to continue engage in my local community that is in the south of the country. So, and this opportunity is starting to also I think, to leave some reflections. And hopefully we leave. It's not enough, definitely. It's not enough to start to make Zoom meetings or to have the digital or a mix of the two models together. We need to find ways that citizens from their living room, they can participate in the evening, in the morning, when they're doing their lunch break. So new forms. And and participating is not just sharing their opinion. is also discussion, is also coming to a consensus, is also bringing quality into the discussion within what is the digital space. And this is a big reflection, and here there is a lot of work also to develop. Going on this direction, I am sharing with you a picture of the study we launched last year. It was a study on models of youth participation in decision making. And this is something that we want as DYPALL network. It's an ongoing collection mapping of practices, because again, I think we need to map what is working, what is not working, what is coming also new. So our idea is every 2 years we'll launch here a collection of good practices. The one that we are working now will be focusing on digital participation, e-governance, e-participation, all these new forms. But just to tell you, you can find this on the website of DYPALL, and I can share also the links. But this was coming out, and then in the end of my presentation, and I think Marco will explore also the new opportunities, but this was coming from a specific program. There's more than Marco will introduce, but it was an Erasmus II exchange of good practice among different European partners that were mapping these practices. So again, Erasmus as a tool to map projects, not just to develop new forms, but then we'll see ways also of developing new forms, test, try, new tools and new mechanisms. Here in this study, we had 29 practices being presented from that countries. Something that I think it's interesting when we talk about youth participation is that we see it at two different dimensions, I would say. One is the dimension of the structures and mechanisms for youth participation, and I'll explain that. And the other are the projects, initiatives, tools that are preparing, so are they educating, they have more a pedagogical process. So starting with the last one, we believe that a lot of the practice that also we were mapping, and also you could see in your local communities, are focusing on what? Preparing young people to participate. They are the simulations of the parliament, of the different institutional bodies. They are educating young people to participate. And this is very relevant, because many times you need to be prepared, you need to be motivated, encouraged, and understand how that space works in order to be able to participate. But when we see the other structures and mechanisms where young people are really participating to influence public policy making, and when I see this really influencing, that their decisions and discussings are having an impact, being a consultative body or a more deliberative body, then these examples start to be quite smaller. So at this moment, we have a huge dimension that is preparing young people in different formats and so on. The quality of this preparation we can question, but still in terms of concrete projects that are supporting that young people see that their participation is impactful, makes any change in the level of the community, here we see a gap, okay? And we try to map practice. I even encourage there is an ongoing collection, so you can use the website to share practices and to share projects that you know, and then we'll approach you in more detail. Here is a bit of the structures. For example, there's this project of the Deep Linking Youth that was more focusing on this e-participation. And then, for example, the youth participatory budget of Cascais municipality. That is one of the practices, because when we were discussing, it's also nice to present a concrete project. So it will be one of the practices that I'll present very briefly. Jumping to it, youth participatory budget, something very trend nowadays in Europe. Within the DYPALL network, we are very critical to it, and I'll explain why in a while. But what is participatory budget? So for the ones that don't know, it's a type of participatory democracy in which ordinary people decide on how to allocate part of the municipality or public budget to specific projects. So participatory budget allows citizens to identify, discuss, and prioritize public spending projects, and gives them the power to make real decisions about how money is spent, okay? Beautiful. Citizens, okay, we have our elected representatives that have their program that we voted, but also then there's a mechanism where citizens can really say what is more important to them that year, that moment, and part of the public budget goes to support that project. Perfect, now it's a very good project. And it is, and it's good that we have in place different participatory democracy mechanisms. The danger of youth participatory budgeting or participatory budgeting, and you can see how it's increasing the number of projects around the globe is that it's something very easy, both to implement and both for the local authority to say, okay, so we already have participatory democracy in my community. So we don't need to, citizens can we already decided when electing us, and they already deciding on when I say, how they say it in English, that's small pieces of bread. In Portuguese, it's called migalhas, some pieces of bread. And they say, okay, we give them this. Usually there's municipalities that already go up to more than 4% of their budget goes for citizens to decide directly. But usually it's something that is really 0.0000 something of the municipality budget. But this is not just the fact that sometimes is taking the effort of what could be a diversity of approaches in terms of promoting participatory democracy. Another issue is that how these processes are done. And I'm going to present you a practice that I consider that is very good, a very good example on how youth participatory budget can be done, when it has also a pedagogical dimension. It's also capacitating citizens to understand how democracy works, but to practice and to exercise democracy. This is the participatory budget of Cascais, and the youth participatory budget in specific is what I'm going to present, because in many cases, what we are promoting with this is a simple competition. We are promoting not collaboration, not the fact that citizens are discussing and seeing what that my proposal and my project and the project that a couple of citizens or a neighbor would propose is more relevant and is more priority, but we are starting to compete. That would be part and is part of the game, but the dimension of citizenship, of understanding priorities and understanding what is more relevant, then in many times it's neglected in these processes. So participatory budgets, they are very different, and some of them, they have very good practices. They have a very good process of discussion, of prioritizing, and they are great really in different dimensions. We have even now in Portugal, we have the participatory budget on national level, with all the difficulties of implementing it, but it's a national initiative now. I don't know if there is any other country that now implements on national level. The regional, local, so even institution schools they have, so there is different types of participatory budgets, and also how it's approached and how it works is also diverse. But talking about a good example, and then you can also contact me or contact directly Cascais, and they will be happy to share, because it's one of their flagship projects, and they have reasons to be proud, because something that has been developed in quite an interesting way. Just to have an idea, where is Cascais? You can see Portugal on your left, and Cascais is just next to Lisbon. One of the good things here is that as a pedagogical process, even the rules, how it works, was set by young people in this youth participatory budget. It was started within schools, working with different classes and with different schools of the municipality, but they were deciding how the process would go, what would be the rules. Okay, so having citizens deciding, young citizens in this case, children deciding how would be the process. So, and here they highlight the process as a pedagogical process, okay? Can see, and I don't think is the part of the projects that they are designing in terms of the budgets. Here we're talking about 2,500 euros. It was 10,000 in total that they have. Now, last time it was even increased. But then the project that comes out and is decided, one of the project goes for the community participatory budget, and then the budget can go up to 300,000 euros. Here you have some pictures of the assemblies. You can see that, and we'll go back to that time that we would not need to use masks all the time. The voting process also within the different schools that the project was taking place. So it also illustrates, for the ones that want to know more about participatory budget, that was a Common Europe. It was also an Erasmus Plus project that was discussing these quality indicators, quality standards, was coming also even a white white paper on participatory budgeting. So an effort also to try to bring some quality or some reflection in terms of quality on this tendency of increasing this kind of project that is interesting. But again, then you have the participatory budgeting toolkits, the world answers of participatory budgeting. So there is a lot of resources online available for the ones that would like to know more. Before I start to shut up, just one last sharing of one project. And if you remember, and I cannot go to the title because it's very far away. But if you remember, and it was something that was interesting, that was engaging, not youth, but youths. Okay. And this, I think, there's a small detail, and it was not me putting the title. It was the colleagues from ALDA, but for me, sometimes the details, they count. And this S that becomes this plural, but it's a plural that also brings diversity for me. Because when we talk about the participation of young people in democratic process, we are also talking about how we reach a diverse group of young people. Because usually, at local, regional, national level, when we are talking about spaces of youth participation in decision-making and more the formal spaces, or even the others, they usually are young people already from middle-high class, with a certain background, with a certain opportunity that are assessing and able to put their voice, their thoughts, their ideas, their solutions on the table. This is a project that we are currently engaged with other colleagues, also coming from Italy and other organizations, that are trying to bring and empower also other stakeholders to be on the table. So other groups of young people that what I call usually are not the usual suspects. And I think this is also very relevant. When we're talking about creating new forms, reforming, improving existing forms, we need to look on the diversity that exists in our communities. And some groups, they will need to have support to be able to have their voice there. Nobody better than the people living in that community and the young people in that community will have the solutions for what is affecting their life. And this can be very relevant for the overall community. So how we are bringing them into the table. It's a European project that is bringing also new forms of engaging young people using the theater in this case, and to bring them closer to the European opportunities, but also to the process of contributing to the decision-making at different levels and understanding and getting empowered also to participate. To shut up myself, and before passing to the questions and so on, if there is an opportunity, Marco will present a lot more. We are starting a new framework, 2021-2027, within the Erasmus. But here there is not the budget, but it almost doubled. We cannot see here the numbers from 2021 to 27, but almost doubled. And also what I wanted to highlight, it's something that it's one of the pillars of their priorities, participation in democratic life, okay? So there will be opportunities for organizations to get funded, to test new instruments, to reform existing instruments, to bring these young people that are usually not engaged into the process, to capacitate people that are working in the municipalities, people that are working in the civil societies for us, because sometimes in theory it makes a lot of sense. In practice, sometimes it's difficult for us to have the instruments to reach them. And I think my 20 minutes already passed a bit now, Evan. Controlling time is not my best. But thank you very much. And if there is questions, please feel free to approach.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Bruno, for your presentation and for sharing with us tools and opportunities. If there is no question, I would then give the floor to Andrea Messori, President of Replay Network, to talk about the Learning Bubbles project. Thank you. Thank you very much. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Eva. Simply, I'm Andrea, and I'm the president of the Replay Network. Replay Network is an organization that's settled in Rome, but finally is composed by a lot of trainers and so on. And among all these trainers, I can count certain kind of very important names like Bruni Antonio from Portugal, Marco Boaria also from Italy. So we have an experience together. So we use a lot of these brains in order to reflect about the different kind of levels and perspective. And as Bruno was presenting you, a practice that is in a certain way raising the bottom-up approach. So how to think and open something, and especially certain kind of dynamics inside policy, managing, and so on for young people. So letting them really express themselves and to be included. With the project of Learning Bubble, we, in a certain way, try to find a way to work with exclusion, that is a potential exclusion, but also a real exclusion that comes from the digital pandemic change that has been provoked, especially from COVID-19 and so on. So the project I'm presenting to you is something that we are doing now, and it has been conceived thanks to the provocation that comes from COVID-19 finally, because it has to be something positive in the COVID-19. So we need to exploit everything that is arriving to our country's people and so on in order to find something more interesting and positive to be done in the future. So we were trying to work on the Learning Bubble. What is and where it comes from? In reality, it comes from a lot of years of working on youth policies with young people, with non-formal education, and we translate as Replay Network all the knowledge and all the experience of working with young people in non-formal education to adult education. And during adult education, we take one very important, for us at least, expression of learning, that is community garden. It means the places that normally adults are recovering from disaster use or abandoning spaces and creating and making them again green, in order to cultivate some zucchini, tomatoes, and so on. In reality, we discovered that it is absolutely not like that. In the meanwhile, you are cultivating, you are digging 1 square meter in order to obtain zucchini, tomatoes, and so on. You can make a different use of it. You can include people, so work a lot on inclusion, work a lot on participation, working a lot on integration, working a lot on learning in general, in participation, and so on. So for us, community gardening becomes a hub through which it is possible to multiply a lot the efforts in order to include not only the context that is right around the community garden, that normally is in a quarter or in a specific space in a city, but also to include a larger amount of people and to include especially individuals in it, because the community garden is made by individuals and is referring to other individuals, but working together on common and collective purposes. And this is really, really interesting. In the last 10 years, we worked a lot using lifelong learning project before, Grundvik, that was for adults, so exchanges between adults and so on. And after we passed to, again, lifelong learning program, and we use the part that was concerning transfer of innovation and working on what? On the kind of people that normally inside the urban gardens were namely not having the time to cultivate any kind of zucchini or tomatoes, because we were so engaged in supporting people that they have no more time for digging their piece of land. So they leave it to someone else. We name these people gardenizer, garden organizer. So we create a new name in order to pass this message, this concept. That was good because it was a new name for English people, a new name for French people. And normally they are always looking for a translation in French, but no translation in French for something that doesn't exist in French. And Italians and Greeks and Spanish were so happy anyway to have something new because they are quite Latin approach, no? Oh, something new, fantastic. So let's take it. And we work a lot on this professional profile. It is a sort of mediator between who is inside the urban garden and who is outside, say, the local context. So also the institutions, also the political level. So it was really interesting to make and to work on this topic. The pandemic crisis arrived, and in Italy it was a complete lockdown. And when we have a complete lockdown, everything is closed. Even parks were completely closed. Not possible. You have to stay at home. If you have your dog, you have just to come down with the dog, and the maximum round you can do is around your building. It was the most, because everything else was closed. Apart what? Priorities. What is priority? Priority is when you cannot close it, because if you close something that has a priority inside, for example, an industry of edible goods, you cannot close it because people need to eat. But also inside the world of agriculture, you cannot close agricultural industry because they have to produce food. So in the city, the only place that was still open was community gardening, because inside the community garden, you have vegetables and they need to be fed and they need to receive water and so on. So you have to take care about them. So finally, the city discovered what is a community garden, because it was the only place open where the people can go. When we were discussing and working with them, an idea comes from facing another topic that was very important inside the question of what the pandemic crisis was bringing to us. And so we go to what is the learning bubbles. We have an idea that was to, in a certain way, face one of the biggest problems. The schools are being closed. The people, young people that were under development, that normally rely to other young people as a referent person for their development, because they learn more and they count a lot on peer exchange of learning, of knowledge, of emotions and everything. So when each of them has to stay at home and has to receive also school teaching through a screen, they start to be in difficulty, especially because in our country, in Italy, there is an enormous digital divide between North and South. Okay, in the North, you have some people passing almost all the morning asking to the teacher, "Can you hear me?" And the rest in the South, you have not even nobody asking for, "Can you hear me?" because they were not appearing at all on the screen, because they have no connection, no digital device, at least not enough devices at home in order to be connected with the school. And that was something that the school was not prepared to face, at least not in these numbers, not as a massive approach. So we have different problems that comes out. And we were also discussing with a lot of emergency point in our city that was taking care about adolescent people, saying, alarm, alarm, 30% of increasement of suicide of people under 16 years old, people having depression under 12 years old. So the pandemic crisis brings a lot of other things that were not visible from the society, because we closed the society and the individuals in the house. So we cannot perceive it. We cannot see what was happening. So we decide to work together and to think in a different way. As well as the urban garden, we have to think the city in a different way. We have to rethink the spaces in a different way. We have to see that also supermarket can be a place where you learn, but you have to create the condition for it. And we have to let the people to have a possibility to be engaged and to have a possibility to accede to digital resources in order to participate and to enjoy what is possible to be done in a digital way, but at the same time, we have to continue to provide quality learning. So we analyze and make a lot of different thoughts about the fact that school were using in a certain way by distance teaching, but at the same time at home, parents cannot leave the youngsters at home with a full internet free without any kind of support, first of all, and any kind of control, secondly, because it's quite dangerous. They were not ready for having also this kind of help that you need around you in terms of cybersecurity, in order to know that nothing bad can arrive to them. There was a problem that normally the new families that has problems, so families that you can say disadvantaged, were composed by two workers. It means the parents were working, and because they were working and they cannot make smart working at home, or if they have to make smart working at home, they have to work at home. They cannot follow the youngster. The problem was that they have to take a lot of permission from work to stay at home and to help the youngsters to be connected with the school, to make their homeworks and so on. At the same time, the Ministry of Education in Italy was saying, let's exploit external areas. Which one? If everything is closed, you cannot go anywhere because you need to be individually protected. So we decided to work and to start from the urban gardens because it was the most easy space where to think about a change in the society in terms of urban areas. So we go and we think about, okay, let's take, for example, why don't we use this kind of fantastic transparent balls that a lot of hotels are using as bedrooms in order to enjoy Scandinavian night sky or landscape or in the desert to enjoy one night outside sleeping and so on, because they are transparent and they have been produced in a very concrete material that can keep high level of difference in terms of temperature. If it is too cold, if it is too hot, anyway, inside it's okay, you can do it. So why don't we produce something like that, and we create a space that is in condition to be in the nature, to be protected and individualized in a certain way in terms of use. When they connect with the school and they are following what the didactic by distance is proposing to them, but at the same time they can be among the others. They can be also in condition to get out of the learning bubbles and to do something, and to continue to do educational activity. But you need, of course, support. So what we think, that we worked 10 years on the Gardenizer, providing to the Gardenizer not only the knowledges in order to exploit everything that is learning in a urban garden, but at the same time we give to them all the knowledges and skills needed in order to manage and to make a connection between adults in the urban garden and youngsters that come out from the learning bubbles. We need a digital educator. That is, a digital educator means someone that is very good in IT. No, is an educator receiving a training in order to be able to support also and exploit also digital resources, something that Bruno was mentioning before also. And we need connectors, because we need to connect the schools together with the external spaces, because the school is not used to use and to exploit what is outside of school. Normally, the learning space is inside the classroom. In this case, it is not, because we think to have bubbles inside the urban garden and to have a possibility to equip them with a table, ergonomic table, the one that you are using for gaming, for example, no? Because in this way you can adapt this table to the different people that were entering continuously and exiting the learning bubble, because the learning bubble is something that a lot of people can use one by one, of course, individual use, but a lot of people coming. Why? Because one time you finish to connect with the school, you can get out and you can find other people that can engage in educational activity with you. Inside you have a chair that is, again, adjustable, and it is ergonomic because you have different kind of youngsters. Can be very tall or not really a lot. It can be more large or more thin. It depends. You have a tablet with a graphic pen. You have a case with a built-in keyboard. You have a noise reduction because, okay, you are anyway outside, so a lot of noises can arrive. But you have also the possibility to have a Wi-Fi powerful connection, but to have at the same time the possibility to have all the security, because anyway is a minor that is in the middle of a public space in a transparent ball. So you can imagine how attractive it is for certain kind of cyber criminals. So you have to ensure them. That's why we are working in this moment on the project with the society, the company that normally around the world has one of the most powerful system of cybersecurity. It is Apple, because we are working with Apple Europe. So our store is the dealer of the products of Apple. So we are working with them on the question of software. Inside, there is a special air conditioning system that has been done especially for COVID. So it means it's sanifying constantly everything that is inside the bubble. So having the possibility also to not need any kind of sanification between the use of one youngster or another one. Simply while you are moving, the machine is washing and working on everything. What is very, very, very important is that there is also an internet connection platform that is putting together the information between the parents, the teachers, a social assistant if there is any kind of specific need for the youngster, or any kind of other person that is involved in the life of a youngster in terms of educational needs. So also spatial needs. So in this way, the educator can have a possibility to see on a screen in a confidential way all the information needed in order to do what? To know in which hour, from which hour to which hour they have to connect to which school, to do which kind of activities, which matter, which topic. So in this way, they can study right after, right before any kind of other activity that can be done and can be relied to what they are doing in the school, having the possibility for the youngsters to go in depth with some activities, topics, or to realize, for example, a video reportage from and inside the urban garden about the topic that the classroom is treating in this moment. So in a certain moment, they can be a support for the teacher, providing to them original matters, original materials, and be protagonist for one time or more than one time inside the classroom, and to propose to them what they have the possibility to have, because they have another opportunity, an opportunity more than the ones that are in the school. So it's possible for them to have something more. So imagine that for one time, for the first time probably in certain parts of the city of Rome especially, it can be that some people that normally has less, they are treated better than the others, and they have more opportunities than the others, at least to be protagonists and to learn more. Of course, there is the possibility to exploit everything that is outside. That is a space that is normally dedicated to learning. So you can, for example, use vegetables, you can use the life cycle and the possibility of growing plants and so on. Exploiting what? Exploiting mathematics, biologics, sciences, everything that can be applied imagine the augmented reality that gives the possibility for young people to see what they are doing today, to put the seed in a specific place, and with augmented reality to verify which will be in the next future. Young people are particularly interested to obtain immediately results and to be and to have concrete results right now, not too far in the future. They are interested to have immediate results. So it's possible to have a possibility for these people to see concretely what is the result of their work today. So they are, of course, more motivated in doing it. But of course, there is the possibility, being in the youth garden, to exploit these spaces during the weekend when they are free, because there is no school. So there is the possibility for the urban gardens to do what? To make a continuation of the project we were starting about adult education. It means to include and to engage adult people inside learning projects. And some of the learning projects can be led also directly from the young people, because they become leaders in this case. Of course, the project is 2 years long, because we have 24 months for doing it. In the first year, we are concentrating on what? In designing the pedagogy, in designing everything that is needed in practical. That means the platform in order to communicate between teachers, educators, social assistants, the family, and so on, to create the cybersecurity system. And after the second year, it will be action. It means learning bubble in UK, learning bubble in France, learning bubble in Italy, and each of the places where the learning bubble will be done have a partner that is a school. Why? Because it was needed to have a school inside, because you cannot think to all the difficulties the other side inside the school you have in order to implement such a project, because you have to open the school towards the city and let the city enter inside. So you need to have a school inside. That's why this is a school project. Erasmus Plus, K2, school project. So the idea is, of course, to have effects on the schools, because they can really test a new methodology that they can continue to do also despite to the pandemic. Who cares about the pandemic? It's no more, it was an excuse, it was a need. But now it's a question of how we would like to reconceptualize the use of the spaces we are doing in our society. The teachers, because finally they can really get motivated in doing not only flipped classroom, but also to exploit also learning bubble in order to complete their education, and they can count on a real community that is taking care about learning. They are the most important actors, probably. Also the families considering themselves the most important actor, and also the youth centers are considering themselves the most important actors. But finally, the teachers can have a possibility to connect with all these actors. And this is one of the most important innovation inside. The families has really the possibility to have a possibility also to count on different outdoor spaces where to bring the youngster and ensure a quality education anyway. Students, they can have a freedom to think to the learning pathway also in a different way. So also to combine different way to participate to learning. And this can be very motivational for the people that normally don't feel very well inside the school in terms of classroom, 4 walls done of 25 people listen to a teacher, but they can also participate and think to the people that normally are dropping out. It can be very important for them in order to recatch their attention, to re-bring them inside the system, and to bring them motivation to go on. And the urban community gardens, because the risk in community gardens is that it is a place that has been created by adults, and so the young people perceive it as a place simply and only for adults. But it's not. These adults engage and participate and reconvert the space in the city for everybody, also for young people. But you need to let the young people get in. in order to live what you have created and to consider it their own space also. In this way, probably in terms of intergenerational dialogue, it will be important and it will be effective. So the project is 24 months lasting. It's including Italy, France, United Kingdom, but also Belgium. Why? Because we have a University of Leuven that is studying the impact of all of that. Because when you are working with the schools and when you are proposing innovation inside the learning system, you have to prove that what you are proposing is functioning. So we are very, very, very engaged in working in techniques of collecting also data, analyzing the impact on the learning, and to provide together with the project, so full instructions, how to do it, how was our experience, also to provide numbers and proofs that everything has been done in a proper way and is really having an effect on youngsters. Simply providing to the people a space that is attractive. Because for young people, something attractive is a good way to engage them. A space that is individual, but at the same time is collective. A space where the adults outside of it are obliged to see inside, are obliged to be involved, are obliged not to avoid, to think about what these youngsters are doing inside these bubbles. And this is interesting because for us, educators and trainers, this is a good field where to work on it. And we have to combine all that, as usual, in Erasmus+, providing all what we want to do and we will do in a way that can be transferable, something that can be provided to someone else, to municipalities, to regions, to schools, to youth centers, to youth groups, to anybody that is interested to implement this kind of innovation and to add this kind of spaces inside their city. So this is our aim, and this is what Erasmus Plus is doing as a plus. It means transferability and sharing. That are the two values that are behind what we are producing. Because Learning Bubble is not a product. Learning Bubble is a process of change that starts from the local reality and goes towards people that normally, again, as Bruno was mentioning, are not participating not only in society, but sometimes they are also excluded from learning. And learning, in their specific case, is a right.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Andrea, for the presentation of this great project. I hope that some of the attendees will find inspiration on that. I would leave, actually there are a couple of questions. One is related to, some attendees are asking if we can share the presentations with them at a later stage. And there is another question from New Life Association, I think is addressed to Bruno. They are working on increasing the participation of women via gender responsive budgeting, but they are at the beginning stage. So they would like to know if you organize training or webinars for gender responsive budgeting in the project and in these specific fields.
One of the things we develop within the DYPALL network is quite tailor-made training opportunities. We have some projects and some work on the political participation of young women, and then it's a matter to talk directly with the organization to fine-tune a little bit and try to understand if what we can offer makes sense for the partner. Some time ago, I think last week, I was listening to a podcast about the impact on that women empowerment, women participation would have on climate, and how important would be. This was more focusing on development countries. I don't like much the term, but how this would impact climate changes and would be, in their perspective, the thing that would impact more our sustainability as a planet. But there was already very interesting points. I think in terms when we when we look more on the Western reality, there's a huge work, not just to work on terms of gender equality, and I think this is it's not just a problem of the South countries, it's generalized within the spectrum of society. But when we talk about political participation of women, I think here that is more close to our work, and political participation of young women, that is here a lot still to work on.
Thank you very much. So I would now leave the floor to Marco Boaria to present some of the funding opportunity at the European level dedicated to youth. Thank you again.
Thanks, Eva. Thanks, Andrea and Bruno. Hello, everybody. So we had been told some innovative practices in the field of youth. Both Andrea and Bruno also suggested how to eventually support these kind of activities. Especially Bruno mentioned several programs, projects funded by Erasmus+. So Andrea also mentioning some private support and cooperation to support youth initiatives. So my brief presentation is to provide you a general overview of what could be the funding opportunity to support youth projects at the local level and not only. I have some presentation, but I will have to give you a general overview, and then through Eva we may send you an abstract of some relevant information about that. First of all, I guess I don't know all of you here in attend the event, some of you. I always warn not to run the risk of using only Erasmus+ when we are tackling youth issues. Of course, if we want to match a program dedicated to youth, to the youth-related issues, of course, it's Erasmus+. But depending on which perspective we want to take, if we open our horizons in that way, we may have several and more opportunities also to address youth participation or youth empowerment in Europe and beyond. So as you probably all know, we have just started the new programming period 2021-2027, which is a new challenge. Actually, a record budget of the Commission amounting at more than 1,800 billion euros for the forthcoming 7 years. Because thanks to COVID, if we can say thanks to COVID, for one thing is the increased resources allocated to the budget of the Union. We have a part of this budget which is called the Next Generation EU, which is reinforcing the multi-annual financial framework 2021-2027. In this new multi-annual financial framework, there are two key important mainstream that you probably all know. On one side, the so-called ecological transition. So one of the major priorities of the Commission in terms of policies is related to the ecological transition. So to everything which is green, sustainable development, clean energy is a must in the forthcoming years, also in terms of projects. The other one is digital transition. So also some examples that Bruno and Andrea presented go in this direction or in both directions. So also digital transition is a must. So everything related to the digitalization, new technologies, augmented realities, and so on is also a transversal cross-cutting values and principle which needs to be adopted and integrated in all the projects that we have in mind. This is because the new multi-annual financial framework is currently based on a key document, which is actually the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations, with these 17 objectives, which actually cover all the aspects of our life, and on which also the new multi-annual financial framework 2021-2027 is based on. So there are no goals since a couple of years, but there won't be any calls in the forthcoming years which do not mention to which sustainable development goal the project supported the granting within that goal are contributing to. So the major documents is at the basis of the multi-annual financial framework is the sustainable development goal. We are now in transition phase. We have just started this new programming period. We changed quite a lot, also the architecture of the program on the top of the amount of resources available. Because just to give you some figures, I can share my screen just to give you some quick information. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see.
Yes. Okay, so this is the record-breaking budget of the Commission with the 7 chapters in which the budget is divided. And you can see that, for example, cohesion and values is the richest chapter ever among the others. And if you see the whole architecture of the current multi-annual financial framework is composed of 1,074 billion euros, which are the resources allocated to the multi-annual financial framework until 2027, plus an additional envelope of 750 billion euros, which is the Next Generation EU, which needs to be allocated by 2024, since it is an emergency measure, which can also support several different action and activities. So there is a new group of programs. Someone kept the same name, like the Erasmus Plus, still entitled Erasmus Plus 2021-2027, but with much more resources, many more resources, almost the double of the previous Erasmus Plus program. But there are other programs which are new, like, for example, the SERV program or other, let's say, and the ICI program concerning external cooperation. They change a little bit, of course, the format, the structure, and there are also some tendencies to make programs bigger and more integrated rather than small programs and not so integrated as it was in the previous programming period. So back to the programs which may support youth initiative, of course, we have Erasmus Plus. I don't want to focus on this, but I mean, just on this in a very detailed way, but just to give you some, let's say, insight. This is the Erasmus Plus, sorry, I guess you can see it. Can you see it? Yes. Okay, this is the Erasmus Plus 2027, just to highlight some of the possibilities that you may have. So we still have a program which focuses on 4 major strengths. So it's training, education, youth, and sport. As you probably know, the European Solidarity Corps, former European Voluntary Service, is now a self-standing program with more than 1 million euros allocated, which is out of the Erasmus Plus program. Of course, still very much connected. But how Erasmus Plus has changed? Let's say that there are, first of all, almost 25 billion euros. If I'm not mistaken, there were 13.5 in the previous programming period. So almost the double. There was a big campaign also of the European Youth Parliament asking for Erasmus Plus per 10 times. They didn't get 10 times, but they get at least a double. So it's an important program in terms of resources to be looked at. What is new? So more or less, this is the percentage. 83% we invest in education and training, 10% to youth, 2% to sports. So you see that the biggest part is allocated in any case to education and training as it was in the past. Who can participate are, of course, the program countries, which are the EU member state, plus North Macedonia, Serbia, Iceland, Liechtenstein, Norway, and Turkey. Of course, we have a news concerning UK, which moved from program to region 40 to partner countries. just to highlight the main priorities, on one side, as you can see, inclusion and diversity. So there is more and more focus on the inclusion and diversities of the target groups that you will, let's say, involve and engage in your project. And then, of course, in line with what I told you, which are the key priorities of all the new multi-annual financial framework, there is also the digital transformation as one of the key horizontal priority for Erasmus 21. Environment and fight against climate change, once again, in line with the general objectives and priorities. Also, Erasmus Plus wish to contribute to, let's say, the fight against climate change, to the preservation of the environment. So contributed to this digital transformation, ecological transformation, which is one of the key strengths of all, let's say, the 7 years program. So, for example, developing competencies in environmental sustainability, including contribution to SDGs, developing green strategies and methodology. So whatever topic we take, having in mind digital and sustainable, let's say, approaches is very much needed. Then, of course, as you can see also from the examples of Andrea and Bruno, participation in democratic life is still one of the key focus. So a priority to offer opportunities to young people to participate in the democratic life, social and civic engagement, both through formal and non-formal learning. We still have the three, let's say, major actions. So learning mobility of individuals, key action 1. So whoever is involved in these 4 sectors, training, education, youth and sport, can have, let's say, mobility actions with some news concerning the youth participation activities and trainers and staff. Then there is a cooperation among organization and institutions, the so-called strategic partnership, so cooperation both large scale and small scale in different sectors, higher education, vocational educational training, youth, sport. And there is the former key action 3, so support the policy development cooperation, European youth together, as a, let's say, a measure to help local decision makers to be more in contact and in relation with youth issues. Some novelties in education, for example, that give also on the basis of the experiences of the COVID, the pandemic, there are some news concerning the possibility to have blended mobility. There is a system of accreditation, especially in key action 1. And there is no more capacity building for higher education, mobility, 20% of the budget for cooperation with partner countries. There is distinction between different action in key action 2. In the field of youth that we are focusing a little bit, there is new type of key action 1, new budget rules concerning the lump sum. So Erasmus Plus is still let's say, working more and more on the simplification, not only Erasmus Plus, all the project in general, in order to allow different organizations also which are not so structured in terms of secretariat and management to be able to access to this kind of rule. So deadlines per year instead of 3, and this is not good. But of course, it's still good because in some cases, as I tell you later, in some cases, instead of 3, they reduce to 1. So this is also a way of simplifying the system, but in this case, on the side of the Commission, not of the applicants. Youth mobility and youth workers' mobility are separated. And then, of course, the European Youth Together in key action 3 instead of the previous youth dialogue. There are priorities concerning youth projects in 2021, which I just mentioned. So social inclusion, environment, digitalization, democratic participation, with specific priority on youth related to active citizenship, so sense of initiative, entrepreneurship, increasing quality, innovation, and recognition of youth work, employability of youth people or young people, and reinforcing links between policy, research, and practice. So these are the deadlines and the envelope available in 2021 for youth. And these are, I'm scrolling them quickly because we will give you an abstract on this, so it's not worth to focus a lot on the deadline. These are the deadline in the field of sport, which actually are not updated because they've been postponed in June, but they are, I think they are closing now. It was previously foreseen for the 20th of May. So as you see, a lot of opportunities in the field of youth offered by the Erasmus Plus, but starting from what they said before, there is not only Erasmus Plus. And I just want to give you some hints about potential other programs which may support youth initiative. For example, on one side, there is the program SERV, which is a new program, which stands for Citizens, Equalities, Rights and Values, which is actually the merging of two different programs existing in the previous programming period, and namely Euro for Citizen and the REC program managed by the DG Justice, Rights, Equality and Citizenship. So the idea was to put together both projects, the two projects which deal with citizenship. So on one side, the active citizenship, part of a Euro for Citizen program, and the other part is related to citizenship rights, dealt mainly with the REC program with DG Justice. Now it's called SERV. There are 4 different strands. One is related to fundamental rights, another one, Daphne is back on combating violence against women and children. Then there is a part related to union values and the part related to active citizenship. In this program, also based on the experience of ALDA in this field, there are several and a lot of opportunity to mobilize young people. Of course, this project needs to be, let's say, open to citizenship, but you can focus on youth as well. For example, just to give you an example, I just got a project funded by the European Remembrance, Active European Remembrance. So it's a measure of the program SERV. We got it in the last call of the Euro for Citizen program, but it still exists in SERV, and the next deadline is the 22nd of June, where we are explaining and presenting the Declaration of Schuman, celebrating the 70th anniversary of the Declaration of Schuman on the 9th of May 1950. So last year it was the 17th anniversary, where we present and we make raise awareness on this declaration, which stands at the basis of the European project with the P in capital letter, through artwork with the students. So we are using theater to present the values, the principles of the declaration in schools supported by the European Remembrance. Or, for example, you can develop a network of towns through the program SERV, where youth play an important role. And so supporting exchanges, supporting joint initiative within the communities, of course, following the principle of the program, but addressing mainly youth also through this program. Another one which I wish to highlight is a Creative Europe, which is the key program for supporting culture. But on one side, you can use culture as the main target. On the other side, you can use culture as a tool to promote engagement, to promote participation, to promote empowerment. For example, just to give you also a concrete example, always funded by the previous Creative Europe, of course, because Creative Europe has just been launched. And so there are no calls. Can you hear me? Yes? Okay, because yeah. I receive your message now, Andrea. So Creative Europe, for example, we got a grant in order to support a transnational orchestra involving different musicians, young musicians, traveling around Europe as an experience for young musicians, explaining, for example, the European added value of Rossini which a couple of years ago, it was the 150th anniversary of Rossini. So we addressed youth issues through Creative Europe, highlighting European values and empowerment, engagement of youth, in this case, through music. So I really want to, let's say that it very much depends on the perspective and what are, of course, your objectives. But if you open, let's say, these horizons, you can use different tools to empower, engage, and work with youth. Another program which is relevant with the current new multi-annual financial framework is Horizon Europe. Horizon Europe is the research program, let's say the follow-up of the Horizon 2020 program, actually the richest program ever. Horizon Europe has an envelope of 95 billion euros. So in the history of the EU, we have never experienced such a rich program, where there are different topics, especially in cluster 5 related to democracy, inclusion. Youth can have a relevant voice or can be a specific target because these research programs are not anymore only addressing universities or research center, but they strongly need a balanced partnership composed of research center and university and practitioners. So organization, municipality, association, which are able to put in practice the outcome of the research. So to pilot experiences at the local level based on the research, to experience the implementation of a potential new idea developed by universities at the local level on several different topics. And there are also very nice characteristics of Horizon. Technically speaking, they support 100%. And they cover 25% of indirect costs, but this is in brackets. This is not the reason why you should apply for Horizon. But on the other side, they have also good characteristics. For example, we have just got 2 Horizon Green Deal as a partner. Last week, we got 2 grants, where, for example, we will implement this ecological transition through practices at the community level and where young people will be involved. So, as I said before, transition, ecological transition, digital transition are key topics, but you can, let's say, tackle them and address youth also through an Horizon Europe project. Then, of course, Horizon is open to researchers. Researchers are usually young, but of course, there are also several other channels and perspectives through which to involve young people through Horizon Europe. I will stop here, but there are many others. For example, all the programs related to the territorial cooperation, the so-called Interreg, might be also an option to support youth-led initiatives or youth initiatives. Projects focused on the supporting startups, for example, small medium enterprises. So there are several opportunities. Of course, the starting point is always the idea. And through, let's say, taking the specific idea, we can find help find the best tool to support the initiative. I would stop here, Eva. Of course, we could go further, but I will leave some minutes for the questions. And I saw some questions here. Of course, we will share an abstract, Christian. So we will definitely share some information, and you can always get in touch with us for further information. I can reply to the next one if you want, Leva. How can we see which university has plans with the Horizon Europe program? Is there a list of counterperson of the Belgian university participating? Well, listen, there are several ways. Of course, I guess that most of the universities are active within Horizon. It very much depends on which department is focusing on which topics, because also in Horizon there are 5 clusters. For example, we are very active in, we will be or are already, even if the program has just been launched, on the cluster 2 on energy and sustainable related issues, on the cluster 5 related with democracy inclusion. So actually you can have a list, you can have an access to the a list of previously granted projects, where you see who is the leader, who are the partners, and see what kind of project this university have implemented and developed and have been granted. So there are public lists in the how to say, in the website of the Commission, which informs you about the university which has been granted in the different topics, in the different codes. But I would rather work in the other way around. If you have an idea, I would definitely approach the university, the department of the university, which is closest to your field of action, and see maybe more than one, or the Belgian one, or also other contacts. We may also share some contacts. We have been playing quite an important role in Horizon 2020. We have been granted more than 10 projects, 2 of them as leader in the last 7 years. So we have also enlarged the network of our, let's say, of the university we work with. So, but I would encourage a proactive approach. Get in contact with the university that are close to your mission, to the department, to the faculties of the university, which are close to your field of action, and see whether they are thinking to apply to different topics of Horizon, which might be of common interest. In that way, there could be, let's say, a further development, a cooperation, of course, starting well in advance, because not to reduce the importance of Erasmus+, but Horizon Europe needs a bit more time to develop a successful project than other kind of programs. And I'm sure that it could benefit you all. I don't know you all, but if you're a representative of local authority or youth association, this is also something that you should look at.
Thank you. Thank you, Marco. If you have any other question, you can also reach out to us by writing to membership@alda-europe.eu. We will also share with you the presentation and an abstract of the European program that Marco presented today. Yeah, we can keep in touch in the next weeks for any kind of questions or information you want to receive from our side. I thank you all for your participation. I thank you, the speakers that participated and joined us today. And let's hope to have the chance to meet soon again, maybe this time in person. Thank you. Thank you very much. Have a nice evening. Thank you all.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.